Jake Morrison looked out the window of the space station and felt his stomach turn. The metal walls around him hummed with power, but all he could see outside was the endless black of space dotted with distant stars. He had been traveling for 6 months to get here, and now he was about to meet aliens for the first time in human history. The station called Haven's Rest spun slowly in the darkness. It was huge, bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. Ships from different worlds docked at its many ports like bees returning to a hive. Some ships looked like metal tiers, others like twisted branches, and a few glowed with their own light. "Commander, Morrison, they're ready for us," said Dr. Lisa Carter. She walked up beside him, her hands shaking slightly as she held her tablet. Lisa was the smartest person Jake knew when it came to studying life forms, but even she looked nervous. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked her. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting beings from another world," Lisa replied. She tried to smile, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. Ben Rodriguez joined them at the window. He was their language expert, the man who would help them talk to the aliens. "The translation machines are working perfectly," he said. "We should be able to understand each other just fine." Amy Watson, their cultural expert, hurried over to them. "Remember, we don't know their customs yet. We need to be very careful not to insult them by accident." Jake nodded. As the commander of this mission, he knew that everything depended on making a good first impression. Earth had been trying to join the Veltar Confederation for 3 years now. The Confederation was a group of 12 different alien races that controlled this part of the galaxy. If humans wanted to trade with other worlds and learn new technology, they needed to become members. The meeting room was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air without any visible support. The floor was made of some kind of crystal that changed colors as they walked on it. The aliens were already waiting for them. High Arbiter Zethka stood at the center of the room. Her body was made of what looked like living crystal, clear and beautiful but also somehow frightening. Light moved through her like water, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans," she said. "We have traveled far to meet you." Beside her stood a creature that looked like a giant insect. Its body was covered in dark green armor, and its 6 arms moved constantly. This was the Krillth delegate. Its translator box made clicking sounds before turning them into words. The third alien was the strangest of all. It had no solid body that Jake could see. Instead, it appeared to be made of pure light that shifted and changed shape. This was one of the Lumina, beings of pure energy who rarely left their home worlds. "We are honored to meet you," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Earth hopes to learn much from the Confederation." "Yes," said Zethka. "We have much to discuss about your world and your people." The formal talks began. They discussed trade routes, technology sharing, and the rules that new members had to follow. Jake found himself relaxing as the conversation went on. The aliens seemed reasonable and willing to work with humans. But something strange kept happening. Every few minutes, the aliens would stop talking and look around the room. They would tilt their heads or turn their bodies as if they were listening to something. Sometimes they would make small bowing motions toward empty parts of the room. At first, Jake thought they were just nervous habits, but it happened too often and in the same way each time. "Excuse me," Lisa said during a break in the talks. "We've noticed that you seem to be acknowledging something. Are we missing something important?" The Krillth delegate's antennae twitched. "We show respect to the Eternal Watchers," it said through its translator. "They guide us always." "The Eternal Watchers?" Ben asked. "Are they recording this meeting?" Zethka's crystal body flickered. "They are always with us. They have watched over the Confederation since the beginning. Surely your people know of such things?" Amy leaned forward. "Could you tell us more about these Watchers? We want to understand your customs." The Lumina being pulsed brighter. "There is nothing to explain. They simply are, as they have always been." Jake was confused, but he didn't want to push too hard. Different cultures had different beliefs, and he needed to respect that. The meeting continued for another hour. Jake noticed that the aliens kept making those same gestures, looking at empty spaces and nodding as if someone was there. Then he saw it. Out of the corner of his eye, Jake caught sight of something moving behind the alien delegates. It was tall and dark, like a shadow that had pulled away from the wall. For just a moment he could make out the shape of what might have been a very tall person, but thin and stretched out. Jake blinked and looked directly at the spot. There was nothing there. He shook his head and tried to focus on the conversation, but a few minutes later he saw it again. This time the shadow seemed to be walking slowly around the room, staying behind the aliens. "Is everything well, Commander Morrison?" asked Zethka. Jake hesitated. He didn't want to seem crazy or disrespectful, but the shadow was there again, and this time it seemed to be standing right behind the High Arbiter. "I'm sorry," Jake said carefully, "but I keep seeing someone moving around behind your group. A tall, dark figure. Is there another delegate we haven't been introduced to?" The room went completely silent. Zethka's crystal body went from bright and clear to almost black. The Krillth delegate began making rapid clicking sounds that its translator couldn't keep up with, the lumina being flashed so brightly that Jake had to look away. "What did you say?" Zethka whispered. "I said I can see someone behind you," Jake repeated. "A tall shadow that keeps walking around." The aliens looked at each other. In what Jake could only describe as terror, Zethka began backing away from the humans. "The meeting is finished," she said, her voice shaking. We must return to our ships immediately." "Wait," Jake called out. "Did I say something wrong? I'm sorry if I offended you." But the aliens were already leaving, moving faster than Jake would have thought possible. Within minutes, the humans were alone in the huge meeting room. "What just happened?" Lisa asked. Jake looked back at the spot where he had seen the shadow figure. For just a moment he thought he saw it again, taller and darker than before. Then it was gone. "I don't know," he said, "but I think we just discovered something we weren't supposed to see." 3 days passed before the aliens contacted them again. Dr. Lisa Carter spent those days pacing around the human quarters on Haven's Rest, checking her equipment over and over. She couldn't stop thinking about what Jake had seen during the meeting. "They're scared of us now," she said to Jake as they ate breakfast in their small dining area. "I can feel it every time one of them looks at us." Jake nodded. He had been having strange dreams about tall shadow figures walking through the station's corridors. "Maybe we should have kept quiet about what I saw." "No," Lisa said firmly. "If we're going to work with these people, we need to understand what's happening, and they need to understand us too." A message arrived that afternoon. High Arbiter Zethka requested that Dr. Carter visit their main research ship, the Eternal Vigil. She could bring one escort, but no weapons and no recording equipment. "I'm going with you," said Sergeant Tony Miller. He was a big man with kind eyes, but Lisa knew he was one of the toughest Marines in the human fleet. "If something goes wrong, you'll need backup." The Eternal Vigil was unlike any ship Lisa had ever seen. It was built like a huge flower made of metal and crystal. As their shuttle approached, Lisa could see aliens moving around inside through transparent walls. The ship was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel. When they docked, a Krillth guard met them. Its translator box buzzed as it spoke. "Follow the marked path. Do not deviate. Do not touch anything." The corridors inside the ship were wide enough for 4 humans to walk side by side. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the air smelled like flowers and metal. But what caught Lisa's attention was how the alien crew members behaved. They kept stepping aside for nothing. Lisa watched as a group of Nexari crystal beings walked down the corridor ahead of them. Suddenly they all moved to one side, pressing against the wall. They stayed there for several seconds, then continued walking. "Did you see that?" Lisa whispered to Tony. "Yeah." They acted like someone was walking past them, but there was nobody there. It happened again and again as they walked through the ship. Aliens would step aside, bow their heads, or pause their work for no reason that Lisa could see. They seemed to be making room for invisible visitors. Their guide led them to a large laboratory filled with equipment Lisa didn't recognize. Dr. Velen, the ship's chief scientist, was waiting for them. He was a Lumina like the one from the meeting, but his light was dimmer and more controlled. "Dr. Carter," he said through his translator, "we need to understand what your people can do that we cannot." "I'm not sure what you mean," Lisa replied. Dr. Velen pulsed brighter. "Your commander saw something during our meeting. Something that we have never been able to see directly." "The tall shadow figure?" "Yes. We call them the Eternal Watchers. They have guided our people for thousands of years. But we cannot see them as you can. We only feel their presence." Lisa pulled out her scanning equipment despite the rules about no recording devices. "May I take some readings? I promise I won't record anything. I just want to understand." Dr. Velen hesitated, then nodded. Lisa activated her sensors and immediately got results. The air around them was full of electromagnetic signals that her equipment had never detected before. The patterns were complex and seemed to move through the ship in organized ways. "There's something here," she said, showing the readings to Tony. "Multiple somethings. They're big, and they're definitely intelligent." "Where?" asked Dr. Velen. Lisa pointed to an empty corner of the lab. "Right there, and behind you." Dr. Velen spun around, his light flickering nervously. "I sensed nothing unusual." But as Lisa watched her scanner, she could see that one of the electromagnetic signatures was moving closer to Dr. Velen. The pattern grew stronger and more complex. "It's approaching you," Lisa said. I think it's trying to communicate." Dr. Velen began trembling. "The Eternal Watchers do not speak to us directly. They guide us through feelings and instincts. If they are trying to communicate with you—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Lisa understood. These beings that the aliens considered to be their spiritual guides were showing interest in the humans. Over the next few hours, Dr. Velen showed Lisa around the ship. What she discovered made her more and more uncomfortable. The aliens had built their entire ship around spaces they couldn't see. There were empty rooms that served no obvious purpose, but Lisa's scanners showed them full of electromagnetic activity. The ship's design included corridors that seemed to go nowhere, but the patterns on her scanner suggested they were highways for the invisible beings. "How do you know where to build these spaces?" Lisa asked. We feel guided," Dr. Velen admitted. "When we design ships or buildings, some paths feel right and others feel wrong. We have always followed these feelings." Lisa realized that the invisible beings were influencing alien architecture and technology. The aliens were building things to serve creatures they couldn't even see. In the ship's central chamber, Lisa made her most disturbing discovery. Her scanner detected dozens of the electromagnetic signatures moving in complex patterns around alien crew members. The beings seemed to be watching everything the aliens did. "They're everywhere," she told Tony quietly. "It's like the aliens are living in a zoo, and these things are the zookeepers." One of the signatures on her scanner suddenly changed. It grew much stronger and seemed to focus directly on her equipment. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Dr. Carter," Dr. Velen said urgently, "something is wrong. I feel like the Eternal Watchers are displeased." Lisa looked at her scanner. The electromagnetic pattern was becoming more complex, almost like it was trying to form words or symbols. Then, impossibly, her equipment began displaying a message in English. "Curious little observers," appeared on her screen. "You see what was meant to remain hidden." Lisa nearly dropped her scanner. "Tony, we need to leave. Now." "What's wrong?" he asked. "They know we can see them, and they're not happy about it." Dr. Velen noticed their distress. "What has happened?" Lisa showed him the message on her screen. Dr. Velen's light dimmed to almost nothing. "The Eternal Watchers have never spoken in words," he whispered. "Not in all our recorded history. If they are speaking to you..." Another message appeared on Lisa's scanner. "The children were not meant to know of our presence." Lisa grabbed Tony's arm. "We're leaving right now." As they hurried back through the ship's corridors, Lisa's scanner continued to pick up activity from the invisible beings. They seemed to be following the humans, studying them. Every alien they passed looked nervous and confused, as if they could sense that something unusual was happening, but couldn't understand what. When they finally reached their shuttle, Lisa was sweating despite the cool air. As they prepared to leave, she took one last reading of the eternal vigil. Her scanner showed hundreds of the electromagnetic signatures now, far more than when they had arrived. It was as if the invisible beings had called others to come and observe the humans who could see them. "What do we tell Jake?" Tony asked as they flew back to Haven's Rest. Lisa looked at the data on her scanner. The implications were frightening. An entire civilization of advanced aliens was being watched and guided by beings they couldn't perceive. And now those beings knew that humans could see them. "We tell him the truth," she said. "We tell him that we've discovered something that was never meant to be discovered, and we might have just made ourselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Jake Morrison couldn't believe what he was hearing. The message had come directly from the Veltar High Council, the most important group of aliens in the entire Confederation. They wanted the humans to visit Velprima, their most sacred world. No outsiders had ever been allowed there before. "This has to be a trap," said Tony Miller. He stood with his arms crossed, looking worried. "After what happened on their ship, why would they invite us to their holy planet?" Dr. Lisa Carter studied the message on her tablet. "Elder Keseva says the Eternal Watchers specifically requested our presence. They want to meet us." "That's what scares me," Jake replied. "These invisible beings have been hiding from everyone for who knows how long. Now they want to talk to us? Why?" Amy Watson looked up from her research. "I've been reading everything I can find about Velprima. It's been the center of their religion for over 10,000 years. Every major decision in the Confederation gets made there." "What kind of decisions?" asked Jake. "Everything. Which planets to colonize, which species to accept as members, even how their technology develops. The aliens go there to pray for guidance, and somehow they always get answers." Ben Rodriguez shook his head. "How can they get answers from beings they can't even see or hear?" "That's what we need to find out," said Lisa. "I think these Eternal Watchers have been controlling alien civilization from the beginning. If that's true, then we're not just dealing with one group of aliens. We're dealing with the real power behind everything." Jake made his decision. "We're going, but we're taking a bigger team this time." 3 days later, their ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Velprima. The planet was beautiful, covered in silver cities that sparkled like jewels. But what caught Jake's attention were the massive structures that rose from the surface like mountains. "Those are temples," said Dr. Nina Torres, the team's new anthropologist. "Some of them are over a mile tall." Mike Johnson, their technology expert, pointed at his scanner readings. "The energy coming from those buildings is incredible. It's like they're powered by something we don't understand." Colonel Chris Anderson, their new security chief, studied the planet through the ship's cameras. "I count at least 50 cities, but they're all built in the same pattern. It's like someone designed the entire planet." As their shuttle descended toward the main temple complex, Jake could see aliens moving through the streets below. But something was wrong with the way they moved. They walked in straight lines, turned at perfect angles, and never seemed to bump into each other. "It's like watching a dance," Nina observed. "Everyone knows exactly where to go." Elder Keseva met them at the landing pad. She was one of the Whispri, a species that looked almost human except for their gray skin and large black eyes. Unlike other aliens they had met, she seemed calm and unafraid. "Welcome to Velprima," she said. Her voice was soft and musical. "The Eternal Watchers have been waiting for you." She led them through streets filled with aliens from dozens of different species. Jake noticed that they all moved with the same strange precision he had seen from above. No one spoke unnecessarily, and everyone seemed to know exactly what they were supposed to be doing. "How do they all know where to go?" Jake asked. Elder Keseva smiled. "The Eternal Watchers guide us. They whisper to our hearts and show us the right path." Lisa activated her scanner as they walked. The readings made her gasp. Jake, there are hundreds of them. The electromagnetic signatures are everywhere. The Eternal Watchers? Yes, but they're not just watching. They're doing something to the aliens' minds. The largest temple rose before them like a crystal mountain. Its walls were transparent, and Jake could see complex machinery inside that seemed to pulse with its own light. But when he looked more carefully, he realized the machines weren't being operated by any aliens he could see. Who runs those machines? He asked Elder Keseva. The Eternal Watchers, of course. We built them according to their guidance, but only they know how to use them. Inside the temple, Jake's team made discoveries that changed everything they thought. They knew about alien civilization. The building was full of technology that was far more advanced than anything the aliens had shown them before. Machines hummed with power, creating energy patterns that Mike's equipment could barely detect. But the most shocking discovery was what Lisa found when she took detailed scans of the alien visitors in the temple. Their brain patterns, she whispered, to Jake. They're all synchronized. It's like they're sharing thoughts. Nina watched as groups of aliens stood in front of empty spaces, bowing and making complex gestures. They're worshipping something that's standing right there, but they can't see it. Through her scanner, Lisa could see the electromagnetic signatures of the Eternal Watchers moving among the alien worshippers. The invisible beings seemed to be touching the aliens, and each touch caused changes in their brain activity. They're being controlled, Lisa realized. The Eternal Watchers aren't just guiding them. They're reaching into their minds and changing how they think. Mike discovered something even more disturbing. The technology here isn't alien-built. I mean, aliens put it together. But the designs are far beyond what any of the species in the Confederation could create on their own. What are you saying? Jake asked. I'm saying someone else designed all of this. Someone much more advanced than any of the aliens we've met. Elder Keseva overheard them talking. Of course the Eternal Watchers designed our technology. They have given us everything we have. Our ships, our cities, even our ability to travel between stars. All of it comes from their wisdom. Jake felt sick. An entire civilization of billions of beings was living under the control of invisible puppet masters. The aliens didn't even realize they weren't making their own choices. But the worst discovery came when Jake tried to communicate directly with one of the Eternal Watchers. He stood in front of a space where Lisa's scanner showed a strong electromagnetic signature. I know you're there, he said out loud. I can see you. What do you want with us? The temple fell silent. Every alien in the building stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at Jake. Their eyes were wide with fear and confusion. Then Jake heard a voice in his head. It didn't come through his ears but seemed to appear directly in his thoughts. You should not be able to see us, small creature. You should not be able to resist our influence. Who are you? Jake asked, speaking aloud so his team could hear his side of the conversation. We are the shepherds of this galaxy. We guide the young races, help them grow, protect them from their own foolishness. We have done this for millions of years. By controlling their minds? By giving them purpose. By preventing them from destroying themselves as so many others have done. We are their gods, though they cannot see us. Lisa's scanner began showing massive activity all around them. Dozens of the electromagnetic signatures were converging on their location. Jake, she said urgently, there are more of them coming, a lot more. The voice in Jake's head grew stronger. Your species is an anomaly. You can see through our veil. You resist our guidance. This cannot be allowed to continue. Elder Keseva stepped forward, her face pale with fear. What is happening? The Eternal Watchers seemed angry. They're not your guides, Jake told her. They're your masters, and they've been controlling your people for thousands of years. The alien woman shook her head. That's impossible. The Eternal Watchers love us. They protect us. By taking away your freedom to choose? Around them, the other aliens began to look confused and frightened. For the first time in their lives, they were hearing someone question the Eternal Watchers. The voice in Jake's head became harsh and threatening. You will leave this place. You will forget what you have seen. You will submit to our guidance, as all the others have done. No, Jake said simply. The entire temple shuddered. Machines began sparking and alarms started ringing. The electromagnetic readings on Lisa's scanner went wild. "We need to get out of here," Colonel Anderson shouted. "Now!" As they ran from the temple, Jake could feel the invisible beings trying to push into his mind. But something in human consciousness seemed to resist them. The harder they pushed, the clearer his thoughts became. Behind them, the aliens in the temple began screaming as their controllers grew angry and desperate. For the first time in millions of years, the Eternal Watchers had found something they couldn't control, and they were terrified. Colonel Chris Anderson floated in the asteroid belt between Velprima and its moon, watching his team work inside their hidden base. The hollowed-out asteroid looked like nothing special from the outside, but inside it held the most advanced human technology they could manage. "Another supply ship just arrived," said Staff Sergeant Dan Walsh as he helped unload equipment. "Earth is taking this seriously now." "They better be," Chris replied. "After what we found on Velprima, we might be the only species in the galaxy that can stop these things." It had been 2 weeks since their escape from the sacred world. The Eternal Watchers had tried to follow them, but something about human ships seemed to confuse their tracking abilities. The humans had managed to slip away and establish this secret observation post. Lieutenant Sarah Kim looked up from her communication equipment. "I'm picking up more of their signals. The Eternal Watchers are talking to each other across the whole galaxy." Dr. Paul Carter, Lisa's brother, studied the readings on his screens. Paul was a specialist in how minds work, and what he was discovering about the Eternal Watchers frightened him more each day. "They're not individuals," he said to Chris. "Each one we detected is just part of something much bigger. It's like finding out that what you thought were separate people are actually fingers on the same hand." Chris watched through the observation window as alien ships moved near Velprima. Even from this distance, he could see that something was wrong. The ships moved in perfect formation, never varying from their exact positions. "How long have they been controlling alien minds?" he asked Paul. "Based on what we've learned, probably millions of years. Every major advance in alien technology, every important decision their governments make, every war they fight or avoid, it's all been planned by these things." Sarah's equipment began buzzing with activity. "Colonel, you need to hear this. I think I've broken into their communication network." The sounds that came from her speakers were unlike anything Chris had ever heard. They weren't words or music, but something that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his brain. The team gathered around Sarah's station to listen. "Can you understand any of it?" Chris asked. "Some of it," Sarah replied. "They're talking about us, about the human problem." Paul connected his equipment to Sarah's system. "I can translate some of the brain patterns. They're debating what to do with humanity." The alien voices became clearer as Paul's translation program worked. Chris could make out individual conversations between the Eternal Watchers. "The new species sees through our dimensional barriers. They resist mental influence. Our standard control methods do not work. They are spreading dangerous ideas to our children. Solution: complete elimination of the species. Alternative: forced integration into the collective." Chris felt his blood go cold. "They're planning to either kill us all or turn us into slaves like the other aliens." Dan Walsh looked up from the weapons he was cleaning. "How many of these things are there?" Sarah worked at her console, trying to map the communication signals. "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They're spread across the entire galaxy." Paul made a more disturbing discovery. "Chris, look at this. I've been analyzing the brain patterns of different alien species. They're not natural." "What do you mean?" "I mean, these species didn't evolve naturally. Someone designed them. The Nexari were bred to be living computers. The Krillth were made to be perfect workers. The Lumina were created to manipulate energy. Each species is like a tool built for a specific job." Chris understood the implications immediately. The Eternal Watchers didn't just take control of existing alien civilizations, they created those civilizations. Exactly. And every species serves a purpose in some huge machine they've been building for millions of years. Sarah intercepted another conversation between the Eternal Watchers. "The biological tools are becoming unreliable. Several worlds are showing signs of independent thought. The human contamination is spreading. Recommend immediate sterilization of affected populations. Chris grabbed his communication device. Sarah, can you trace where these signals are coming from? Working on it. Her fingers flew over her controls. Got it. The strongest signals are coming from the center of the galaxy. There's something huge there. On the main screen, Sarah showed them a map of the galaxy with communication lines connecting thousands of points. At the center was a massive cluster of signals so dense it looked like a star. That's their headquarters, Chris realized. The source of all this control. Paul was studying readings from several alien worlds. Chris, we have a bigger problem. Look at these population reports. The data Paul showed them was terrifying. On 12 different worlds, alien populations had suddenly stopped growing. Birth rates had dropped to 0 almost overnight. They're sterilizing entire planets, Paul said quietly. Any world where the aliens are starting to think for themselves is being quietly eliminated. Dan loaded his rifle and checked the charge. We need to warn Earth. It's too late for warnings, Chris replied. If these things can sterilize planets, they can destroy Earth just as easily. Sarah's equipment picked up a new signal, closer than the others. Colonel, we have a problem. Something's coming this way. On their long-range sensors, they could see a ship approaching their asteroid. It was moving slowly and seemed to be scanning everything in its path. Is it one of ours? Dan asked. No, Sarah replied. It's a Veltar science ship, but look at this. She showed them the ship's movement pattern on her screen. It's moving in a perfect search grid. No mistakes, no wasted motion. Paul looked at the readings. The crew is under complete control. The Eternal Watchers are using them to hunt for us. Chris made a quick decision. Dan, get everyone to the emergency stations. Sarah, kill all our outgoing signals. Paul, is there any way to hide from their scans? Maybe, Paul replied. If they're looking for electromagnetic signatures like the ones Lisa detected, we might be able to shield ourselves. As the alien search ship grew closer, Chris could see through his telescope that the crew moved like robots. They stood at their, stations without talking, their eyes empty and staring. Those poor beings, Paul said. They probably don't even know what they're doing. The search ship passed within a few miles of their asteroid. For 10 minutes, Chris and his team held their breath waiting to be discovered. Then the ship moved on, continuing its mechanical search pattern. We got lucky, Dan said. This time, Chris replied. But they're not going to stop looking, and every day we wait, more alien worlds get sterilized. Sarah picked up another communication. Between the Eternal Watchers, human resistance stronger than predicted. Recommend upgrading control methods. Prepare final solution protocols. Time frame, 7 rotations. Paul's translation program worked on the alien time measurements. 7 rotations, that's about 2 weeks in human time. 2 weeks until what? Chris asked. Sarah intercepted more signals. The answer made her face go pale. They're not just planning to sterilize rebellious worlds, she said. They're planning to sterilize the entire galaxy and start over with new species that will be easier to control. Chris looked out at the stars surrounding their hidden base. Somewhere out there, billions of alien beings lived their lives without knowing they were puppets in someone else's show. And now their puppet masters were preparing to cut all the strings at once. Get me a direct line to Earth, he ordered. Emergency priority. What are you going to tell them? Dan asked. Chris watched another alien patrol ship pass by, its crew, controlled and lifeless. I'm going to tell them that we're not just fighting for humanity anymore, he said. We're fighting for every living thing in the galaxy, and we have 2 weeks to save them all. Captain Rick Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the center of the galaxy grow larger on his main screen. The ship was humanity's newest and most advanced vessel, built specifically for this mission. Around him, his crew worked, quietly at their stations, knowing that the fate of every living being in the galaxy depended on what they did in the next few hours. How much farther? He asked his navigator. 2 hours to reach the target, replied Lieutenant Kelly Brooks. But Captain, the readings we're getting from that place are incredible. It's like someone built an artificial star. Jake Morrison joined Rick on the bridge. His brother Pete Morrison was down in engineering, making sure their experimental equipment would work when they needed it most. Behind Jake came Dr. Lisa Carter, her scanner equipment modified with new human technology that could penetrate dimensional barriers. "Any word from our alien allies?" Rick asked. "High Arbiter Zethka confirms that the rebel fleets are in position," Jake replied. "But Captain, most of their crews are still partially under Eternal Watcher control. We can't count on them in a fight." Sergeant Tony Miller checked his weapons one more time. "How many of these things are we going up against?" Lisa looked at her scanner readings. At least 50,000 individual entities in the core area. But remember, they're all connected. We're really fighting one massive intelligence that has 50,000 bodies. The Defiance had launched from Earth with a mixed crew of humans and aliens who had broken free from Eternal Watcher control. It had taken weeks to help the alien volunteers clear their minds, and even now some of them moved like they were fighting invisible chains. Zethka stood near the main screen, her crystal body dimmer than usual. "I still cannot believe we lived. Our entire civilization is slaves," she said. 10,000 years of thinking we were making our own choices." "You couldn't have known," Jake told her. "They were designed to be invisible to your senses, but not to yours," she replied. "Why can humans see them when we cannot?" Dr. Lisa Carter had been working on that question since their first contact. "We think it has to do with how human brains developed. We evolved on a world where we had to survive by seeing things that were hidden. Predators in tall grass, dangers in the dark. Our minds learned to look for patterns that other species might miss. The journey to the galactic core took them through systems where entire worlds had gone silent. The Eternal Watchers had carried out their threat to sterilize rebellious populations. Billions of beings had simply stopped existing when their controllers decided they were no longer useful." "Approaching the target zone," announced Lieutenant Brooks. What they found at the center of the galaxy was beyond anything they had imagined. A structure the size of a solar system floated in space, built around what had once been a star. The star itself was now contained in a cage of metal and crystal that stretched for millions of miles in every direction. "That's not a space station," Pete Morrison said over the communication system from engineering. "That's a machine the size of a star system." Lisa's scanners went wild as they approached. The Eternal Watchers aren't just using this place as headquarters. They're using it to amplify their mental control across the entire galaxy. High Arbiter Zethka stared at the massive structure. "We built this for them, didn't we? Our people, working for thousands of years thinking we were creating something beautiful." "All of the alien species built parts of it," Lisa confirmed. "The Nexari designed the computing systems, the Krillth manufactured the components, the Lumina provided the energy systems. Every species in the Confederation contributed to their own prison." As they drew closer, the crew began to feel pressure in their minds. The Eternal Watchers were trying to take control of the ship, but human consciousness seemed to resist their influence. "I can feel them pushing," Jake said, holding his head. "But it's like they can't get a grip on our thoughts." "That's our advantage," Lisa replied. "They've spent millions of years learning to control alien minds. But human brains work differently. Captain." Hayes gave the order to begin their attack. But instead of firing weapons at the massive structure, they activated Pete Morrison's experimental device. The machine Pete had built wasn't designed to destroy the Eternal Watchers. Instead, it was designed to make them visible to everyone in the galaxy. "Dimensional barrier disruptor activated," Pete announced. "Beginning broadcast on all frequencies." Across the galaxy, every alien being suddenly gained the ability to see the creatures that had been controlling them for millions of years. On thousands of worlds, populations looked up to see tall shadow figures standing among them, watching them, manipulating them. The Eternal Watchers realized immediately what was happening. Their voices filled the minds of everyone in the galaxy, no longer hidden or disguised. "Stop this interference. You do not understand what you are doing." Jake stood up and spoke aloud, knowing that every Eternal Watcher could hear him. "We understand perfectly. You've been controlling these people, like puppets. You created entire species to serve as your tools. We saved them from destruction. We prevented wars, guided their development, protected them from their own violence, by taking away their freedom to choose. Freedom leads to chaos. Chaos leads to extinction. We have seen it happen countless times. Lisa stepped forward. You were afraid. Your own species faced extinction, so you decided that no other species should have the right to make the same mistakes. For the first time, the Eternal Watcher's mental voice seemed uncertain. We were dying. Our world was ending. We chose to become eternal to guide others. But you became controllers instead of guides, Jake replied. You turned an entire galaxy into your personal garden. Around them, reports came in from across the galaxy. On world after world, alien populations were seeing their invisible masters for the first time. Some were angry, some were terrified, but all of them were finally free to make their own choices. The Eternal Watchers tried one final time to reassert control, but their power was broken. When people could see their controllers, the control itself became impossible. What have you done? The voices cried. Without our guidance, they will destroy themselves. Maybe, Jake admitted, but that's their choice to make. High Arbiter Zethka spoke for the first time since the revelation began. We choose to be free, even if freedom is dangerous, even if we make mistakes. We choose to live our own lives. Across the galaxy, billions of voices joined hers. Species that had been silent for millennia began to speak with their own words instead of repeating what their invisible masters wanted them to say. The massive structure at the galactic core began to shut down as the Eternal Watchers realized their age of control was over. One by one, the shadow figures began to fade, retreating to whatever dimension they had come from. Wait, Jake called out. You don't have to leave. You could help these people as advisors instead of controllers. You could share your knowledge without taking away their freedom. The last Eternal Watcher to fade paused. Perhaps we have much to learn about freedom ourselves. Captain Hayes watched as the gigantic control structure powered down. Mission accomplished. All ships, prepare for return to your home worlds. But Jake knew the real mission was just beginning. For the first time in millions of years, dozens of alien species were free to make their own decisions, follow their own dreams, and choose their own paths. Some would make good choices, others might make mistakes. But they would be their own choices, not the decisions of invisible puppet masters. As the Defiance turned away from the galactic core, Jake looked out at the stars and smiled. Humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than technology or weapons. They had given them freedom, and freedom, Jake knew, was the most terrifying and wonderful gift of all.